Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining me again this week. This week's guest is just dynamic and exciting, and she has so much to talk about that we can't just do it in one show. Today is part one of a two-part series with Christine Beckwith. So sit back and hang on, and let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I don't think any of you are quite ready for my guest this week. She is just electrifying. I am joined today by Christine Beckwith. She is a 30-year award-winning veteran of the mortgage industry, and her accolades take an entire page. So I'm only going to give you some of the highlights. She is a 4-time best-selling author. I actually happen to have one of her books sitting right here next to me. She has shared stages and shared billing with some of the most famous speakers, including Gary Vee. She now owns the largest consulting firm in the U.S. that specializes in banking and the brokering industry. If that is not enough, she owns 2 magazines. She owns The Vision and Women with Vision magazine. I told you, I don't think any of you are ready for this. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Christine Beckwith. Christine, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Wow. I want to take you around with me wherever I go. That makes me feel so special and kind of old too, by the way. You'll see quickly I have a youthful spirit, but yeah, the years have stacked up and as have the experience. So I'm just so proud to be a part of this industry.
You know what? This industry is really interesting because it is what you make of it. You can come to this industry with whatever you've got and you can make the most of it. And I think both of us have similar backgrounds where we literally started at the bottom. Yeah. I started as an originator, so did you, and you've worked your way up into the very top regions of this industry. But you took all of that a couple of years ago and decided to create 2020 Vision. It's really fascinating on how fast it grew. So tell us, first of all, what is 2020 Vision and what inspired you to start this organization?
Sure. All of that is true, by the way, what you just said. I always make a joke that everybody started in the mortgage industry by accident and that we have somebody to blame for being here. And I think that's God honest truth. And that leads to the second part of the question, which is what is 2020 and why? I can tell you that my entire career, I found and sought out a lot of wonderful mentors and teachers and people and trainers by asking a lot of questions. And so that helped me find my way. I did a lot of trial and error. Eventually, through my career, I would be in positions to affect actual development of training and biz dev and sales and that sort of thing. And then I had 24 years of executive leadership to be kind of playing in the sandbox of sales and understand through, emerging and declining markets in the industry and really felt the effects of that. Shut down a company, that had 1,200 people, was the news deliverer of that, putting myself out of work after 12 years to save shareholder price on Wall Street. And until you've met the Grim Reaper in this industry and then reinvented yourself again, which would take me on another 12-year journey, all those things led me to a place where as I got near 50 and I looked back between the job that I just described closing and then my next leg of my career with Annie Mac for 12 years, I had a summer off. And my mom had a brain aneurysm and was battling that summer her way back to health. And so I was nostalgic. I mean, think about it. I had lost a 12-year job. I had a brand new baby. So I was and I was late in my 30s. So I had this new thing going on called motherhood. And I was jobless, which was weird. And I wrote my book, Wise Eyes. And during that time, I visualized that summer. I was really pulling out of myself, what do I want to be when I grow up? Where am I going? Who am I? And I thought, I'm a teacher, And so with answering those questions, as I wrote Wise Eyes, I actually secured the domain for my now website, visioneersuccess.net, then. And I held that domain and paid for it annually for 12 years while it was not live, because I knew in 2006 I would one day own a coaching and consulting company called 2020 Vision for Success. And so a lot of people think because it opened in 18 that I was leaning into that 2020 year that would come a couple years after I opened the doors. I wish I could have had that foresight, but I didn't. That's just an ironic wind in my sail, or not, considering 2020 ended up being the year of the pandemic. So we really have 3 silos division. We are like the Disneyland of professional development because we are enormous. We have over 50 employees here. We act like a country club, concierge service. Everything is high end feeling, but at a really, really affordable price. We kill our competition cost-wise, and we deliver high value. We have accountants. We have grief and loss counselors, health and wellness counselors, mortgage experts, product experts, underwriters, tech stacks, copywriters, digital marketing strategists. I mean, just everything you can think of. So I'm really proud. We're not your mom and dad's consulting shop. We're definitely not a one-stop place. And I would say that we're a place that people can come and stay a good long time, can afford to come and stay a good long time, be a part of an incredible community, and really, really evolve under the hood of our resources.
So you're really making an investment into the human being that also happens to have a career. Because it sounds like you put the person first and then help them develop their career second.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to make no mistake. I'm a fierce competitor, and sales is the number one key to success in the mortgage industry and your ability to maintain it, accelerate it. I'm an analyst. I'm a geek. I'm a metrics girl, all of those things. However, top salespeople flock here because they are suffering from depression, overworked. They've been really good. Innate sales abilities, but they have no clue about running businesses. They don't understand what they should be looking at. They don't report properly. They don't do accounting properly. And I say this today, sitting here with 100,000 followers on social media, 50 employees, 1,000 emails coming in a day. And I don't have more time than anybody else. But because I'm certified in time management, because I'm an expert in these things, I have compartmentalization that allows me to be completely focused right now in this interview and not distracted by all the bells and whistles and horns blowing in the background of my life, because I have built my life as if it's a business. And so all the things that I need to run, my home, my child, I don't delegate away my child responsibilities. I'm hands-on. I've never had a nanny. Nothing against that, by the way. But I've just, I've prioritized what's mattered to me. I've stacked the bricks accordingly. People think that you have to give something up to be in this business. Like, you're either not going to have the life, you're going to have the business, or you're going to have the business and not have the life, or vice versa. Or I hear a lot of people saying I'm doing 1,000 things and none of them well. I hear a lot of people say I'm juggling too many balls and things are falling to the ground. I think that's okay. I think you have to first figure out who you are. We start everybody here with a process called the Blueprint for Success. It takes you through 9 key components. I don't mind sharing them. It's future income, current income. You calculate the distance between those two things to get down to a daily, weekly, monthly metrics, forward metrics, activities, look, key stakeholders, who are the people that have a vested interest in your business, enhancers and support. What are the things attached to my business, like tech and all these other things? Am I getting my money's worth? And we treat tech, by the way, kind of like when you're moving out of a house, that keep, throw away, giveaway box. Like sometimes we shouldn't be the managers of our CRM. We should have somebody that's going to be an expert at that, doing that for us. So it's done really well. And in that case, we're not throwing it away. We're keeping it. Obstacles and hurdles, dailies, activities, measurements of success, implementation, execution. Those are the 9 things. And they are all vital to success. And what I see when I get people is 3 of those things being done well, and then a lopsided level of business running. And I don't see that even level. So we're driving towards excellence for people, and we're on a train that we have a lot of seats that people can sit in and figure out how to fix things. Sometimes, that epiphany on time alone, you come here and you get your time management straight by learning prioritization, compartmentalization techniques. Also, how to get somebody to return something to you faster. We call that the due from other verbal time contracts. That one little tidbit right there is worth its weight in gold. It's a platinum level tip. It's about making people march. When you say march, it's about making people do what you ask without having to ask a second time. It is an art and a science, I would argue. And I've been able to successfully create entire worlds where the people will do that. And it's not an egotistical thing, and it's not a like do as I say thing. It is truly about respecting one another's time. And having people show up when you ask them to return something to you.
Even though you specialize in the banking and mortgage industry, the skills that you are giving your clients they can be transferred to any business, to any life. I mean, these are all skills that we can all use as our daily, everyday walking around life. I mean, who doesn't need more time management? Because the one thing that we can't make more of is time.
Yeah.
The only thing that we can do better with it is manage it and compartmentalize it. I'm really impressed with what you've built, because it's so transferable to everything else. And that's why I said you built a business based on humans first, business second. It just all happens to work really, really nice in concert with each other.
Thank you.
I think that's a beautiful thing. I want to just pivot for just a minute, and I want to talk to you about navigating. I know when you and I first met, you talked about, and you and I actually lamented about navigating through any crazy business, but we'll talk specifically about this one just because this is the one that you and I both know. Navigating through this crazy business is not easy, and male, female doesn't matter. But specifically when we're talking about females, you and I have shared that there have been many, many times, and still to this day, that we're the only female in the room.
Yep.
And that there seems to be rules to a game that they didn't tell us that there was a game being played, and they didn't tell us what the rules are. And like I said, that exists in every industry, but we'll talk specifically about this one. How did you decode this game that we're running in and build this successful career? Because I think many women find themselves in that space.
Yep.
And I just want to work hard and move up.
Yeah.
But that's not always how it works.
Yeah.
So how did you figure that out?
Well, I'm going to tell you that probably for at least 15 of my 30 years, I was literally not consciously thinking about it. I would be lying to say otherwise. And why do I say that? Because I think my environment was it was so stark, for females. I'll give you some numbers. My first origination job, I was one of 19, and there was one other woman, which is really actually a miracle at that point in my career. I joined 187 loan originators after the fact, and I was the only female out of 187. Later, I would become one of 210 branch managers, and I was the only female branch manager. I would be the only female district manager of 14, the only regional of 4, and then eventually the senior vice president of that company. And that would kind of march on. And so, I just recently talked about how I was solicited around 2003 from breaking the glass ceiling at H&R Block's mortgage division. At that point, H&R Block was 52 years old. I remember these stats. A woman had never been at that point, and they wanted to do an interview on me breaking the glass ceiling. And I was so put off by the fact that that was the story, personally, because I think sometimes we cop to that because we're willing. And that to me is taking breadcrumbs. And I just won't do it. I denied that interview, FYI. And later, years later, I wish my older self wishes I took it and spoke my piece. And I didn't because I was afraid to say my truth back then, which was, why don't you ask me how I was the best choice for this job? How I had the best sales amongst the ranks of 210 people, how I earned my seat. Because when we got relegated to meeting some sort of quota or doing some impossible thing, the story just amplified how rare that was. And I don't know if you've ever been a part of sales contests, but if you're the guy in the 200th position of a 200 person sales contest, in that seat, you're like, well, I'm not even going to try because I'm in last place and I'm not even going to try to go. And I think for many decades, we've made it seem impossible to women because of these numbers. And so my story has never been about the numbers. And so I say these numbers to you because I know them painfully. So I am willing to share that I was aware of my surroundings. I knew that I needed to deliver results. I knew the boys would only respect me if I did. I did get teased. And when I got my first district manager position, I went to Palm Springs for a annual sales meeting, and there were 13 other men, and they were having their afternoon meeting at the pool. Okay. I'm thinking this is 2003, 2004. And I was not going down to the pool in a bathing suit. I knew that much. I had traveled all day from the East Coast, and I knew that that was the wrong thing for me to do. And so I went down there with a pair of shorts and a t-shirt on. I had a really nice tan. It was summertime. And the then regional made a joke in the swimming pool. They, all the guys were in the swimming pool. They were drinking, drinks. And they said, oh, look, Christine's here. And look at the nice tan. I guess that's how you look when you have the last place district. I had been promoted to a district that was in last place out of 14 districts. So they laughed. And that was my welcoming to that particular group. And I felt like crying. I'm not going to lie. I felt very awkward. But I am definitely not a person that victimizes myself. Inside my head, I was steaming mad. And I thought, I'm going to kill all of these guys in competition. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to suck it up and I'm not going to say crap. And I did that whole trip. Over dinner that night, the CEO came to visit. And he had been someone that put in a good word for my promotion. And he had been watching me in the branch manager sales ranks. He knew I had been at the top. And he said, you're going to give these boys a run for their money. And I just shook my head, yes. And I will tell you, 16 months later, I won that year's Circle of Excellence with that district, with 125 loan originators. It was very hard to do. I will tell you, the climb from last place to average was hard enough, but from average to the top was incredible. We had unbelievable momentum and we had unbelievable passion because of the story that we were telling. And I made it a story for that group. We met, we talked about what that story was. And so I'll just end by saying to you, I did become liberated and aware when I wrote my book, Wise Eyes, and I handed it in to my editor, and I had not talked about being female in a male-dominated field. And she handed it back to me and said, you are not telling the one part of this story that every woman in America wants to hear. And I laughed and said, are you kidding me? Because at that time, I was still in a group of 6 men at the helm of Annie Mac. And I thought, with mostly men reporting to me, and I thought, I'm not going to do that, and I pushed back. And she said, just write like you're writing in a journal this weekend. Like, nobody's going to see it. And I knew what she was doing. And I was like, all right. And I'm going to tell you, I sat in my chair in my den. And when I began to write for the first time about what that felt like, I sobbed. And I cried and cried and cried through this chapter that I wrote, which is now public. And it's chapter 14 in my book, Wise Eyes. And I said everything I had to say about what it was like for 30 years in this place. And it was rough. I now know in reflection how bad it was at times. But as if I was holding my breath the entire time and just making my way through and not acknowledging the deficits and the I experienced everything: sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. I definitely experienced pay inequality. I fought, by the way, for my pay equality. I pointed out my peers' pay and job. I made HR write job descriptions. Like I am a person that's sitting here who has been written up by my HR department at least 6 or 7 times by calling crap out. I have always been a person that was willing to stand and fight for my piece of the turf if I felt I deserved it, or in defense. I didn't always win those battles because HR tends to go with corporate liability, by the way. They're not going to cop to anything that's going to put their companies at liability, which I learned the hard way as well. But I do feel I made it better for women behind me because I made people uncomfortable enough so that when I left a space, the women were secure that came up behind me. They didn't have to fight the fight that I fought. And I think I fought 6 or 7 fights that I probably made women behind me better off for. And I'm still doing that now, much louder, because today I've got the largest women's coaching division in America under Women with Vision. And the women flock here in our industry for business advice. And these are true blue women that want credit for their work, who are the best choices in their fields. Who deserve a seat at their table. We will fight against discrimination and sexual harassment and advancement, but we're keenly aware of where we are in the world's history. We have momentum. We are evolving. We have our foot through the door, and we're all happy about that. I think there's a ton of work that women need to do on themselves, by the way. I was brought up by a couple of hardcore New Englanders that when I would tattle on my friends and sisters, they would tell me, like, what can you do differently? Let's talk about you. Let's keep the conversation about you. And they never let me deflect. And so I'm the same way with women. You want respect? You need to earn respect. You need to be respectable. You need to be respected because you're respectful. And that starts with respecting yourself, number one. I don't need to tell you that. I'm not your mother. And that doesn't mean that I walk under some veil of prudeness. I don't. I am who I am. But I think we have to be willing, to let our results speak for themselves. It's very hard to fight a fight if you've compromised your integrity. Women who sleep with men in the office, they don't have a leg to stand on. I've watched many women that I work with not get promoted when I did, who had just as good as sales numbers as I did, but they didn't have what I had, which is what I've written in Wise Eyes. And that is the integrity, because I drew that line and I never, crossed that line. And because of that, I was a beast in the boardroom. Like, I had zero guilt. And, I would answer those inquiries in jest, and not make the guys feel bad. I tried to tell myself many times that those were just compliments and flirting, and to take them as compliments, that one day I'd be an old lady wishing that a man would look my way. And so I minimalized my thought on being a victim of sexual harassment. And I had a conversation with my dad once. I had a really horrible thing happen in my 20s that really, really was bad sexual harassment. And I called my father, and he gave me a street wise advice. He told me not to go into HR because I would ruin myself. I was trying to climb through the ranks and get a promotion at the time. And he was aware of that. And he knew if I did this and got a name for myself, that I would lose all chances. And so he advised me to go into the man's office and to tell him that if he did it again, I would confront his wife, because the man was married. And that's what I did the next day on my dad's advice. I've told this story at the Bellagio on stage in front of 3,500 people. And that in itself is a miracle that I'm so liberated today that I can talk about these things. So I'll just leave it there and tell you that, how did I get here? The hard way, the rough way, the only way that I knew how. And I'm really happy because I don't think I ever was meeting a quota. I don't think anyone ever handed me a seat to check a box. I'm helping women today really lean in. I want to say this. I don't mean to imply women are unsavory and all of them are sleeping with their bosses and so on and so forth. I'm telling you, as it relates to women in the mortgage industry, there are areas and there are percentages of people that there are things. Mean Girl, it comes to mind as well. There are a lot of women not helping women. There are a lot of women that say they're advocates for women who are mean girls. I recently went to a women's conference, and I can tell you that I had somebody ask me what I was wearing in front of a group of like 5 or 6 people. And I knew they didn't mean what was I wearing rhetorically. They wanted to know the label of the maker of the dress I was wearing because, of the environment I was standing in. And my answer was Amazon Prime. So,
Perfect answer. Perfect answer, because it didn't even matter what you were wearing. Amazon Prime is awesome. I think everybody should say that. I'm a little offended for you that someone asked you what you were wearing
it was
specifically.
obvious too. I was not wearing probably a tailored outfit, FYI. So the question was very Mean Girl, and I'm using it as an example of how bold women can be. And I'm going to tell you, the psychology there is if that person made themselves, I always say, your candle will not burn brighter by blowing someone else's out. And kindness is has a wonderful ROI in the world. So does honesty. And I feel like I have both of those things going for me. People will tell you I'm tough, but they'll also tell you I'm kind. I will show up at the end of my people's marathons with medals to hang around their neck, and I will never miss you crossing that finish line. Like, I am that courtside coach that will run the distance with you in the ditch and cheer you on the whole way and yell at you to get back up when you fall down. And I'll be hard when it's called for. But I also will be the person that stands in celebration and absolute glory of, that mountaintop that you climb. And I think you have to be both things. I think you have to, a lot of people fail to show up. A lot of leaders mail it in. They get those management jobs and they're cushy and they don't go to work the same way as they used to when they had to dig ditches. And I have a shovel in my hand every day. I get kicked out of the ditch every day. My people are trying to get me out of the way half the time. Go do something, go do this, or go do a corporate sale, but I can't help myself. I'm in the classroom. I'm that dean that's walking around the school, poking my head in and watching the class from the back.
That's our show. Thank you so much for joining me this week for part 1 with Christine Beckwith. Be sure to come back next week to hear part 2 of my interview with Christine. We'll see you next week. That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.